here today to discuss a war that's going on. A war that receives little notice, unfortunately, but it's killing millions of people. The strange thing is you cannot see the attackers. It's not tanks, battleships, big airplanes. These enemy forces are invisible, more like spies, saboteurs, terrorists who work at night. Why haven't you read about this? It's because it's a medical problem that is pretty much ignored because we don't have a remedy for it at the moment. At least we don't have an official remedy for it. But are there things that can be done about it? Let me first tell you what the problem is, who's invading what, and then we can discuss if there's some self-defense measures that might be able to hold off these enemies until much better weapons are developed. I'm talking about mild cognitive impairment. Mild cognitive impairment, usually abbreviated just MCI. So that's what I'm going to say from here on, MCI. MCI is the first visible sign that a person's cognition is slipping. Maybe there are sophisticated tests that could spot it ahead of time, but MCI is the first visible sign to you, to your friends, that your cognition might be slipping. Maybe you can't remember as good as you could before. Maybe you have difficulty with numbers. The problem is amplified because a lot of normal people have problems with memory and numbers and so on. So there's a gray area between the normal zone of people, especially as they age, and those people who are evidencing mild cognitive impairment. By general agreement in psychology and psychiatry, neurology, there are certain tests that can be given to define, according to these arbitrary definitions, whether or not you are in mild cognitive impairment. In other words, is it the first sign of your brain processes slipping? Well, why should anybody care about that? The reason is that a certain proportion of people with MCI go on to develop Alzheimer's disease. So, MCI can be considered the first visible sign of Alzheimer's disease. Now, don't hit the panic button. It doesn't mean that every person with MCI will definitely get Alzheimer's disease. Only a certain proportion of those folks go on to develop Alzheimer's. And right now, we don't know how to tell them from the folks who will not go on to develop Alzheimer's. Some stay the same, a few even get better. But Alzheimer's is there as a lurking threat. That's why it's important during the MCI stage to look for a correctable process going on. For example, an infection that hadn't been noticed, or high blood pressure might be evidencing itself in the brain, diabetes, anything else that's detectable and correctable by present-day medicine and health will stop your MCI and hopefully reverse it so that you do not proceed to more serious brain damage, which could include Alzheimer's disease. But I'm here today to talk about that group of people who have definite MCI and no correctable cause can be found with ordinary concepts of medicine at this moment. There is no magic drug that your physician or healthcare provider can advise you to take to get rid of or control MCI. In fact, sadly, the prevalent advice about MCI at the medical office is get your affairs in order. Meaning, it's a polite way of saying, of course, you're probably going to die. We've got nothing to offer you, so be sure all your paperwork and taxes are paid. That is a very difficult situation for anyone who finds himself or herself in MCI. Well, why isn't there a pill or a program to definitely stop MCI? Medicines have been tried, usually on folks who've already progressed into Alzheimer's disease. Sadly, these have not corrected or reversed Alzheimer's disease. And they really haven't been tried on the preliminary stage, MCI, which can go on into complete Alzheimer's disease. Millions of people have Alzheimer's disease. If MCI is the first visible stage, it might be occurring. Then obviously millions of people have passed through MCI. What's being done about them? I was shocked to find very little available in the conventional medical literature on correcting, halting, even reversing MCI. And yet that is the very stage we should be concentrating on to abort, correct, nip in the bud Alzheimer's disease. It's like foreign troops are invading your brain country, but you're not going to attack them until they're deep inside your brain and dig their trenches. Of course, military doctrine tells us that's ridiculous. You should be trying, medicine should be trying, to attack these evil forces on the beach while they're trying to make a landing. It's much easier, usually, to throw an enemy back into the sea than it is to get rid of them once they've landed and dug big bunkers. So, is there anything that can be done for mild cognitive impairment? This question occupied us for 3 years. And strangely enough, in researching the medical literature, we found there are dozens of possible remedies suggesting that MCI can be halted or possibly even reversed. Well, why don't we know about these? I think the big reason is that none of them can be patented, and therefore no researchers can afford to conduct the gold-plated, super sophisticated field trials that would satisfy everybody that these possible programs possibly work. It's very sad. So what, therefore, can you do if you're not a millionaire or don't have a millionaire supporting you to try these out officially? Well, most all of them are available free or over the counter. Now, what do I mean by free? For example, many science papers have found that exercise regularly and good sleep can improve cognition for people who have mild cognitive impairment. So, exercise is free, so is sleep. But you may need to buy some vitamins, minerals, or supplements, or change your diet. That may involve some money, but usually not a lot of money. The supplements that have been tested, in many cases, have shown improvement in at least some of the people taking them. Now, why aren't these sold as drugs? Because our U.S. Food and Drug Administration requires elaborate proof before something can be sold as a drug. And drug trials usually cost the sponsoring company millions of dollars. The saving grace for that situation is that the substance is often patented. So in return for spending millions of dollars on research and field trials, the pharmaceutical company hopes to recoup its money by charging prescription prices. Now, the supplements that are available are very inexpensive compared to prescription drugs. But let me repeat, they have not received the blessing of the Food and Drug Administration, nor do they even seek it because of the elaborate proof that would be required. So do they do any good? Here's the funny thing. In searching the medical journals, we found dozens of reports by reputable clinicians and institutions that some of these supplements, for some of the people, do seem to halt or reverse the loss of cognition. Well, why don't we know about these nationally? Well, you see, they can't be patented, so who could spend the money to publicize them? In addition, a funny point is that they may only help 5% or 10%, maybe 15% of the people taking them. Well, can you imagine an antibiotic that was supposed to kill your germs helping only 15% or just 5% of infected people? You'd be laughed out of the Food and Drug Administration, and it would be shameful that you're selling it for that global purpose of eradicating this one infection. But it may well be that mild cognitive impairment has several contributing causes. In addition to that, people are very different. You don't look like your neighbor. Even identical twins raised in separate circumstances are affected by differing environments. So your genetics, your environment, your food, your travels, all these things make you different from someone else. So while we could hope there'd be a silver bullet, single pill to correct your mild cognitive impairment, there really may not be one out there. So what does that mean? It means you're going to have to look at a list of possible helpers and design your own program, take a few gambles, and see if you can be helped. The good thing is, these items are not very expensive, and most all have very few or no side effects. The theme of this presentation is counterattack. We know that when an enemy invades, the military strategists counsel a counterattack to drive them either off the beach or out of their dug-in positions. Well, how could we counterattack MCI? It's going to have to be a program that you design, because at the moment, no Alzheimer's advocacy group, no government agency, no people that I know of, except a few pioneers, offer any kind of a program to even try to help you out of MCI. It's an unmentionable subject. In fact, I call it the deadly silence. Since if you are one who's going to move beyond MCI into Alzheimer's disease, your journey will be a quiet one. Don't make waves. Learn to live with your MCI is the advice I often see. But if it's headed for Alzheimer's disease, you are not living with your MCI, you are dying with it. Oh, are you shocked that I said the word dying? It is very strange that you can hardly find the word dying in the Alzheimer's literature, and certainly not in the MCI literature. Some of the accounts I read about, quote, living with Alzheimer's indicate it's almost no worse than rheumatism or dandruff. I can't imagine why we don't pay more attention to MCI. But it's time for the bugle to sound. It's time to counterattack this invader. Remember, you can't see it clearly. It's like spies, saboteurs, terrorists, not a uniformed army easy to detect invisible vehicles. Now, how to attack MCI? First of all, realize it's a counterattack. You've already been invaded. So it's up to you to summon your own army and weapons to try and push this invader back from whence it came. Where can you find the information? The medical journals have it, but it's spread all over the place in more than 100, 200 journals. Moreover, remember, none of these articles is the gold-plated, sophisticated field trial that drug companies have used to validate their prescription medicines. So you're going to have to take some chances. People may say, oh, that's never been proven. Well, what they often mean is the phenomenon or the benefit has not been proven by the standards of the super sophisticated, gold-plated clinical trial. But if you can just take hints and suggestions and preliminary data, you can find in the literature many accounts of various substances and practices that can reduce or even eliminate mild cognitive impairment. In our own project, which we call MCI911, we are compiling lists of references and articles that bring forth the possible remedies you might elect to employ. We try not to pick any that have harmful side effects, though of course we can't know individual allergies or strange metabolisms. But most of them are so straightforward, like for example, vitamin B12. Many seniors are deficient in that vitamin. So what would be wrong with augmenting your vitamin B12 if you have a deficiency? Actually nothing, but no manufacturer of vitamin B12 can patent it, and none can afford to conduct a gigantic field trial to validate B12 for relief of mild cognitive impairment. So again, you're on your own, but we believe that a united front of counterattack by citizens who are informed can actually begin to turn the tide. Maybe then the Alzheimer's advocacy groups and the government agencies will start to direct their funds and their efforts at the initial invaders on the beach, instead of trying to salvage the situation when the enemy is dug into its bunkers deep in your brain. So let me explain that our MCI911 project got its name because, of course, MCI stands for mild cognitive impairment. The 911 was chosen because in the United States, that's the universal emergency number. Something's wrong, help should be rushed. We thought by putting the two together, MCI 911, we could let you know instantly that this is an emergency situation and urgent for corrective action. Can we guarantee anything will save you? Unfortunately not. But here is the key point. Instead of doing nothing and sitting by and letting, quote, nature take its course for several years, at least those people who have MCI can be taking substances and participating in practices which give them a possible fighting chance against this illness. And hopefully, many will not proceed to Alzheimer's. Remember, it's not guaranteed. But my own theory is, if it's not going to hurt you, what's the harm in trying it? Isn't that better than doing nothing and waiting for years to pass with, quote, your affairs in order? We think so. So thank you so much for visiting our website and our program, and we hope you will become a convert to staying informed about possible helps for MCI and participate yourself in this counterattack on the evil invasion.